Ah, Christmas time is here. That means it's time to get together with my family, choke down some Christmas cookies, and sit down to watch my favorite Christmas movie. Really? I say Christmas movie and the first thing you think of is Die Hard. The Grinch! I love this movie and I watch it every year. So when I saw a Grinch video game for the Game Boy Color sitting on the shelf at a store, I just had to get it. The question is, keeping in mind the curse of the movie licensed game, is this game any good? Let's find out. The game has 5 stages, and each stage has 5 levels, so it's pretty long for a Game Boy Color game. Your objective in each level is to steal all of the presents without getting caught by the Who's and without running out of time. You get 3 lives before you get a game over, but you have infinite continues and a password system. There are 3 kinds of enemies in each level: kids, adults, and police. Kids will run after you when they spot you, adults will alert other enemies in the room, and police will try to freeze you with their guns before chasing after you. If you get caught, your heart goes 3 sizes and you die. It's kind of a dark spin on the Dr. Seuss story. What's funny is that you can trick the kids into running into each other, and you can trick the police officers into freezing other enemies. Brilliant! Seriously, tricking the enemies into running into each other never stops being funny. You can't kill the enemies, this is a Dr. Seuss story after all, but you can stun them. You can build snowballs to throw at the enemies, and hitting an enemy will knock them on their ass for a few seconds. The downside is you can only carry 5 snowballs at once, and you can only build them if you're standing outside a building. If you don't have any snowballs, you're stuck fending off the enemies with bubbles. Yes, bubbles. You can't rely on the bubbles because they have a crappy range, so you have to make sure you keep your snowballs stacked, and you have to make sure that you use them conservatively, because if you get stuck in a house without any snowballs, you can get screwed hard, because there are some of the buildings that are near impossible to get through without using snowballs. Also, building snowballs takes a few seconds, which costs you time, and it can cause you to get spotted by the enemies. If you get spotted by an enemy, your movement speed is changed into a run, which makes it harder to navigate corners. It's annoying, yes, but this is a stealth game, and getting caught by the enemies is supposed to be a bad thing. I always chuckle up at the Grinch's expression on his face when you get spotted by an enemy and you start running. The game actually does a pretty good job of balancing out stealth elements. Botching up the stealth doesn't net you an instant death, but it puts you at a severe disadvantage. The game gives you weapons, but it doesn't give you very strong weapons. The game gives you extra points for stealing presents while you're being chased, but the game doesn't save high scores, so nobody cares. The game also gives you bonus points for clearing a level without attacking any enemies or for picking up candy canes, which drop when you get 2 Who's to run into each other. Brilliant! Through about half of the levels you play as Max, the Grinch's dog. He can't build snowballs, but he can bark, which briefly startles all of the enemies on the screen. The problem is that barking doesn't affect an enemy that's chasing you, so if you get spotted, you just plain screwed. Also, if you bark multiple times, then enemies will stay down for less time, so you don't want to rely too heavily on the barking either. This little twist adds quite a bit of variety to the game, since you alternate between 2 characters with different attacks for getting past enemies, and this forces you to use different tactics. Yes, The Grinch is one of those rare movie license games that manages to break the curse and is actually good. Something else I forgot to mention? The enemies don't follow set patterns like they do in most stealth games. The enemies just seem to wander aimlessly around the levels, and in some cases they seem to specifically patrol around the presents that you haven't collected yet. Intelligent enemies, that's something new in stealth games. Well, intelligent aside from the... you know. The game starts out pretty easy, but the game's difficulty ramps up pretty fast. Around the 3rd level of stage 2, the levels start getting really hard. Not because of the enemies, but because of the time limit. The levels get progressively longer and longer and longer as you keep going, and you're simply not given enough time to carefully plan out how you go about taking down each group of enemies. The levels start getting so big that you need every second that you can get just to explore the levels and find out where all of the presents are. You simply don't have enough time to plan out how you get around each group of enemies. You just have to throw caution to the wind and dive right in, or else you're gonna run out of time. That's kind of unique for a stealth game. The stealth games that I've played never rush you to take out the enemies. Don't get me wrong, I love Arkham Asylum, but you do pretty much have infinite time to plot out how you take out each enemy in the Predator sections of that game. The Grinch, on the other hand, gives you a strict time limit and can find areas in which to evade the enemies, so you have to think fast on your feet. The game is pretty simple since it is a Game Boy Color game after all, but it is pretty good and it's really damn hard. But simply being hard doesn't make a game bad, and the Grinch is the right kind of hard. It's hard because the game is designed to be that way, not because the game is designed poorly. So have a Merry Christmas, everyone, and do like I did, and play something that doesn't suck.